Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another installment of A Rebel Without Applause, coming to you, as I always do, from this, my little television studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly, under the sign, overlooking the enchanted land of law, coming to you from the little creative cradle known as Crotona. Sometimes in this life, you seek out circumstances, and other times in this life, circumstances seek you out. And when it does, you pray and you hope that you do the right thing. Such was the circumstance for one 12-year-old girl on Mother's Day, May 14th, 1961. Her name was Janie Forsyth, and her daddy owned Forsyth & Sons grocery store along Route 202, just a lonely stretch of two-lane blacktop, otherwise known as Birmingham Highway, about 5 miles outside of Anniston, Alabama, the county seat of Calhoun County. On the afternoon of May 14th, that Mother's Day, circumstances came calling. And to her eternal credit, Janie Forsyth, now Janie Forsyth McKinney, did the right thing, the unexpected thing, and indeed the heroic thing. And I am very honored to have her here today on A Rebel Without Applause. Welcome, Janie Forsyth McKinney. How are you?
I'm great. Now I don't have anything to say, though.
Well, you were incredibly talkative 2 minutes earlier. Now that everything's rolling, it's all cool. I'm just so happy to have you here. You know, I don't know if this is true, if your life was indeed defined by that one afternoon on that Mother's Day in 1961. I have a feeling if it didn't indeed define your life, it was a pretty important day in your life. And for those of folks that don't necessarily know what happened that day in front of Forsyth & Sons grocery store was memorialized by the media and photographs and sent all over the world. And what happened that day, 2 buses, one of which stopped in Anniston, Alabama, was assaulted by the Klan. And inside that bus was a group of both black and white young people, idealistic and determined to maintain the discipline of Mahatma Gandhi. And in doing so, they were there to challenge segregation, not only in buses, but also in those depots that were like a string of pearls across the South. And these freedom riders, the rides which originated in Washington, D.C., I guess a week or so before, were started by CORE, James Forman's CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. And they traveled through the upper South until they got to Alabama. They got to Atlanta. They were warned by Martin Luther King that things are going to be very scary there. And then the next day, they arrived in Anniston in the bus depot where the bus was surrounded and assaulted. The Klan was aware of this, and they met that bus and pounded the hell out of it, slashed the tires. And ultimately, the police came and escorted the bus out of town. And when it got to the city limits of Anniston, the bus was left unescorted to trundle down Highway 202 towards its next stop, which was Birmingham. But before that, the tires, because they were slashed, gave way, and the bus was forced to pull over on that lonely stretch of 2-lane blacktop in front of what was then your family grocery store, Janie Forsyth McKinney, Forsyth & Sons. And the bus with the young people who were contesting what was already established in law was their right to travel uninhibited without any racial distinctions, not only in buses, but in depots across state lines, a right that had already been affirmed the year before in Boynton versus Virginia by the Supreme Court. They wanted the new Kennedy administration to uphold those laws. Anyway, that bus was forced to pull over because the tires were flat, and it was being trailed by a group of rabid, angry Klansmen that didn't look that different than the folks that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. And they started to swear and beat with chains and pipes that break windows in the side of this, surround this Greyhound bus. They punctured a window with a rock and threw a kerosene-soaked rag and lit it, threw it in, and the bus exploded into flames. And these young people were trapped and could have very easily died, but for the fact that the gas tank exploded and they were able to somehow escape the burning fire and the smoke. And there was a young girl in her home or on a swing observing this. And that young girl on May 14th, 1961, sometime that afternoon, was you. Maybe you can share what happened or what you observed after that.
Well, I knew in advance, maybe several days, maybe the week before, that there were some outside agitators coming to destroy our way of life in the South, which is Klan speak for what the demonstrators coming through our land. And I'm messing this up.
You're doing fine.
I'd heard the week before that there were some outside agitators who were planning to come to Anniston and try to destroy our way of life. I heard this at breakfast where my dad held court over his hapless family. And I started worrying about them right away. I said, don't they know that if they come here, they're going to meet up with the Ku Klux Klan and it's not going to be safe for them. It's going to be dangerous to their lives. So I started in my 12-year-old way, started trying to figure out ways to warn them they were going to meet because I assumed they didn't know. But I couldn't think of any way to get a message to them, even though I had heard that the Ku Klux Klan was tracing them with CB radios and following the procession of Freedom Riders down through the South so that they would be able to meet them at a unified place, which was chosen as Anniston. Anniston was chosen to be the meeting place of the Klansmen because we had so many Klansmen in Anniston and the surrounding environs. And the Grand Wizard or Grand Dragon, I forget his title, actually lived in the area too. So they wanted to make it a present for him. So I didn't know anything about the particulars, and I didn't know any particular thing about the Ku Klux Klan either, except what I grew up hearing about them, and that was about the lynchings and the cross burnings and the various ways they would use to terrify Black people. And but I'd never seen them because the Klan kept itself away from good white folk most of the time, except for the good white folk who made up the Klan. And they hid from each other too with sheets with eye holes cut in them. So you would hear a lot about them, but you wouldn't see them very much, if at all.
But you heard about them. You could feel.
Heard about them. Saw pictures of lynchings in Life magazine. I don't know if you remember that. Life magazine was a new coffee table, big format edition photo magazine, and they regularly shot pictures of dead Black men on crosses and tied to telephone poles and burning. And it was scary stuff, and nobody wanted to really cross the Ku Klux Klan. Everybody was afraid of them. I think parents used the Ku Klux Klan to scare their children into going to sleep at night. If you don't go to sleep, the Ku Klux Klan will come and get you.
Really?
But, yeah. I mean, it's just like a boogeyman status.
Did you ever see the Klan in their sheets or the cross burnings or their convergences? Just something you heard about?
Heard about. I did see some guys out in their sheets when I moved to Mobile, Alabama, several years later, but I had not seen them in 1961.
Now, I just wanted to get this out of the way. It says Forsyth and Sons. Did you have brothers that I don't know about?
One brother is Forsyth and Son Grocery.
Son.
And I think my dad was trying to rope my brother into joining the family business, but he was not interested. So it was a useless naming.
Oh, okay, so he didn't put like a question mark and then please after Son.
Yeah. Dad would please come home and run this store. No, he didn't do that.
So you had an idea that these Freedom Riders were coming through, but you could not have known that the bus was going to come to a stop in front of your own house.
Nobody could have known it because it was one of these, I really believe that was cause and effect. It was a natural thing to happen because with slashed tires, you can't go that far. With a narrow 2-lane road with very narrow shoulders and banks on both sides, you couldn't pull over and park out of traffic. I think the bus driver drove as long as he could. And when he felt the control, the tires were on fire on those rims. And I think he felt loss of control and he stopped at the first opportunity, which was my dad's parking lot, which gave the bus enough room to pull off the road.
And how long had your family had that store in that location?
Since 1948.
So was that your father's father had it or your grandfather?
No, my father built it there. I don't know where the store came from. He built the house in 1948, and that's when I was born.
Uh-huh.
And that's the house I was brought into when I came home from the hospital. And I was brought in by the black maid too. So
Right.
that tells you something
I want to
about my.
talk about that a little bit. So this was your father's business, and had your family been in Alabama generations
Oh
before?
yeah, I haven't done any genealogy because I'm bored by it. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'll do some of that now that I'm retired. But they've been there for generations, and my extended family is in that whole area.
And
Forsyths, Mundys, Hughes, Llewellyns, all kinds of folks in there. Mundys.
and how I've often wondered for someone, who lived in that moment in that place, how recent the Civil War seemed, and the scars of that conflict, they still feel fresh as I research, that moment.
I don't think it was over. Talk about feeling fresh. It hadn't stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, my family called people. My sister married a guy from New Jersey that she met in college. And my dad never stopped calling him a damn Yankee, though he did learn to like him after a while. But
It never ended then.
no. And what he called those outside agitators who were coming to change our way of life, they called them nigger agitators, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a word that I seldom use anymore because of the emotive impact of it.
Right. It's so loaded. And it's so loaded in so many ways. And now that was almost, let's see, so that was 1961. We're 2021. We're just past the 60th anniversary of that morning. And I just, before we go into the events of what you did, which was so incredibly spectacular and beautiful, and it resonates across the decades, but I'm often curious, when something that happened 60 years ago in your own lifetime, how much of it is still memory and how much of it is sort of just because you've repeated these events? I'm curious how fresh that is in your own memory.
I am fairly aware of memory issues because I have made a serious study of psychology. Didn't finish my doctorate, okay, but I got all the coursework done and I got several seminars done. I got close enough to know that memory is impermanent, and the only way it can get etched in hard enough to be permanent is certain milliseconds in that memory that are just seared in. And I have a few of those, and I have linked those seared in memories with memories from other people a little bit.
Talk about this mosaic of memory. And I think it had to have been in the afternoon because the bus was originally
1:30.
What time?
About 1:30.
1:30. So they were just outside of Anniston in the early afternoon. Talk about what you remember, and let's start to paint this picture.
We had just gotten home from church because we went to church every Sunday. We were Southern Methodist, outnumbered by the Southern Baptist, but we all got along, sort of. And my grandfather had come to visit us, which was very, very rare. That's my mother's dad, and he was such an old grump that he never visited anybody, but he was in our living room watching a baseball game. And he asked me what the heck was going on? What's all that ruckus? And I said, I don't know. What do you think it is? And he said, I don't know. Would you, go see what it is now? Well, why don't you get up and go see what it is, Grandpa?
He didn't want to move. It was a good game.
Yeah. So I looked up. I said, there is a bus in front of the store. It was exactly in front of the store. It was in the space between the store and the house out on the parking lot. So I went out to see what it was, and there were people everywhere. They were crawling all over the yard. They were lining the road both ways, and one side road, they were lining that road on both sides. There were just so many people I'd never seen there, but so many people there before. And there were a lot of them were friends that I went to school with.
So you recognized people?
Yeah, I did. I recognized people. And most of them still had their church clothes on, their little Mary Janes and their socks, ankle socks, and
so dresses. Were there other cars there besides the bus? The bus was being...
Oh, yeah, they were. I mean, the cars as far as you could see on both sides. It was hard to tell who was there just to look, who was there to, gawk at what was going to happen. Hank Thomas described it as people who were lined up to watch a lynching, But I'm not sure that crowd had that much awareness. They were just stopping. They were looky-loos. I hate to put a racist tag on every single one of them, though they probably deserve it.
Right. But so there was a caravan of cars, as I understand it, following this bus out of town.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
I went to the store. I went to the front of the store, and there was a red light pole on the right side of the walkway in front of the store. And I stood next to that pole and sort of held onto it for grounding. And I said, I'm going to watch what happens now so that I don't ever forget it. I'm going to try to make a lasting memory in my mind and be a credible witness if I'm ever asked about this event. So what happened? There was a little crowd of people around the back of the bus. I mean, there were people everywhere, but there was a special little crowd at the back bus, kind of the back window.
Mm-hmm.
Men, all men, no women in that crowd. And I couldn't tell who anybody was because they all had their backs to me, and the people on the inside were shielded from identification anyway. So suddenly I saw an arm come up out of that crowd. The arm belonged to a white man. I could see that. It was white because he had on a short-sleeved beige plaid shirt and typical white guy summer wear, I guess. And it came out over the top of the crowd, and he had something in his hand that crashed the back window. He made a hole in it. And then the arm went back down in sort of an arc. And then when it went up again, he stuck something in the hole he had just made with that thing, whatever it was, tire iron or rock or something. The first time he lifted his arm, he broke the window out. The second time he stuck the bomb inside the bus. And then when the bus started on fire, somebody said there was an explosion inside the bus. And I haven't been able to really tie that with the bomb that went into the bus that I saw. But it was not too long before the inside of the bus was burning so much that the people had to get out. And the people around the back of the bus scattered. They didn't want to be in there. But I never did see who anybody was, especially the guy who threw the bomb. And I wanted a good fix on him because I was going to tell the FBI that he had done that. But I never could find out who he was for sure. I believe that has ramifications later. So they got out of the way, and the bus started burning in dead earnest. And the bus driver got himself out, locked the door behind him so the white people couldn't get in to get the Freedom Riders.
So the bus driver got out of the bus and locked the door behind him, trapping the Freedom Riders?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He didn't mean to trap the riders. He was trying to protect them inside. But
so he may not have been aware of the fire at that moment.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But the people coming forward they were down at the floor trying to avoid the smoke, and they couldn't. They were inhaling smoke. They were coughing. And I don't know how they got the door open, but they did. The door opened and everybody started spilling out into my yard. So I'm still looking at this from the back of the bus, and I'm not getting a great first-person view of the action of them getting off the bus. Okay.
You're outside watching this from the front.
Mm-hmm.
And is your father around?
He was in his store. He stayed in the back so he could have plausible deniability.
Okay.
And it was the wise thing to do, too. I realized that in retrospect, but I thought he was just being a big old chicken and should have gone out and rained down the fences.
Did your father say anything to you? Like, get in?
Not right away, no.
No.
So when people started coming off the bus, I could hear them screaming for water. The smoke was so thick and acrid, you could hardly see through it. It would sting the eyes. It was horrible stuff. It was terrible to breathe. And I said, I'll bet I could take them water. That's something I could do. So while I was sitting there thinking about what I could do, I wanted to do something helpful, something that would bring some relief. Couldn't think of what that was until I heard them asking for water. I said, they're asking for water. And when a man asks you for water, what he wants is water. And I also thought bringing water is a comfort thing. It's not political. The Ku Klux Klan, they must have human feelings for these people, even if they've hidden them pretty deep. And if a grown-up did it, the Ku Klux Klan would probably kill them. Like my dad would probably be killed, my mother. And my brother, who was a Marine, was home on leave. I didn't think he should get involved either. And my sister, who was 1 year older than me, didn't come and help me at all because she was hiding in the house. She said she was under the bed because she was scared.
Well, this is very compelling narrative. And it fills in a lot of gaps for me because I wrote a screenplay about this called The Children, and you are a character in my own screenplay, and I finally get to meet you. So
I'm a character.
she's a character. Who knew? Anyway, your brother's back from he's on leave, and your sister's hiding. Your dad's lurking in the back, and these people are screaming for water. Hank Thomas, who was a freedom rider, and others were screaming for water. And then you make a decision and act.
I make a decision to take water to the people who were begging for it. So I went to the house and I got a size A zinc coated wash tub, which everybody in the South or from a farm will know what that is, with a bale handle. And I filled it as far as I could with water. And I filled it until I couldn't lift it. And then I had to dump some of it back out. So I got some Dixie cups and glasses and everything I could find in the kitchen to take water to the people. And I started out, must have been funny looking because I'd take 2 steps and I would drag that bale handle between my legs and go thump, and set in front of me, and then take a couple more steps and thump it again. And I did that all the way out to the yard. And then I started picking out people to give cups of water to. The first person that I met, I think her name is Mabel Hoffman, but I'm not sure. Accepted the water, and I washed her face. I asked her if she was okay. I cuddled her a while and rocked her because she was so scared. Was
she black or white?
She was black. And I always forget to answer that question because it didn't matter to me.
Right. Well, there were white freedom riders and black freedom riders. So
well, I got around to them too, but she seemed the
most needy at the moment.
I'm not even sure she was a freedom rider. She might have just been a bus rider, but she was scared. And I was trying to help her get over that. And then I'd pick out somebody else, and I would take the water bucket over to them and repeat the process. And that's all I remember after that. Fade to black.
And how did you become memorialized? How did your story get picked up so people knew about it that I even know about it, to write about it, and I'm even talking to you?
You can blame CBS Sunday morning for that.
Okay. Shortly afterwards, right?
No. 20 years afterward. CBS picked it up as a 20-year story in Sunday Morning with Charles Kuralt. And Ed Rabel was the lead on that news story. So Hank Thomas told him, he said, look, you cannot do this story justice unless you find that little girl who was bringing us water, going back and forth, through the crowd and back to her house, bringing us water. And so Ed Rabel and Hank Thomas, they were in Atlanta at the time. They hopped in Ed's car and drove to Anniston, Alabama. And there they found my mother in the same house because she hadn't moved. My dad was already dead. He died in 1974, but this was 1981, and she was still there by herself.
How did those events affect your dad and your mom?
I don't know. I know that I asked my dad if he was a Ku Klux Klaner, and he evaded the question the way he always did. And finally, one day when I was older, he said, Janie, how do you think I could have run a business in this neighborhood if I didn't at least go along with them? I said, I don't know. And I think some of the Klansmen used to come by the store and ask him if he was keeping his daughter in line.
This was after the events of 1961.
But he didn't tell me about that. I found out about that later. He was protecting me. I put him in a bad spot, really.
Yeah.
You see that I did it?
Yeah. What were the influences that preceded this event within your own life that made you do what you did? I mean, you could have just as easily run away or been afraid, or who knows?
Well, there are a couple of things. I was raised by a black nanny, a maid. And we had a couple of maids. There was an old white woman that used to come and take care of us in the afternoons. And there was Pearl, who was there most of the day, Monday through Friday. And as it happened, I bonded on Pearl like a mother. And I think it went both ways. So I was protecting Pearl's people.
Did she live with you guys, or did she live?
No, she had her own place. She was very proud that way.
And how would you characterize the black community in and around Anniston when you were a kid?
Segregated. There was a line, just straight as you could draw it on a ruler, and the black folks would be on one side of the street and the white would be on the other. They were that separated.
Did they shop in your store?
Yeah, Dad welcomed them. And if they happened to be on Social Security and they ran short of money before the end of the month, he'd give them groceries on credit till they got paid. He did that with white people too.
Wow. And how long was Pearl with you? How old were you when she?
She left that summer. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. She wasn't there that day because it was Sunday. I remember thanking God she didn't have to see that. But she left to take care of her parents and didn't make it back. So from the time I was born to the time I was 12, or soon after the Freedom Rider incident, she was in my life. Well, she was in my life after she left too, because I would go take the car and go drive down to her parents' home in southern Alabama in the rural areas, and I'd go and visit her.
And what you describe isn't unusual in the South. So many white children were raised by Black nannies and domestic people that were there every day looking after them and loving them. So sometimes it's hard for me to kind of put it together, the animus, the hatred that, was on display.
I don't know why some people could make that break. I couldn't. How can it be possible that Pearl and her family that took such good care of me? I mean, Pearl would take me to her family and take me to her church. I was treated no differently than any of her own people, as near as I could tell. When I fell down and scraped my knee, I would say, Pearl, come get me, Pearl. And then sometimes I would forget and I'd say, Pearl, Mama, and I mean Pearl.
So Pearl, those people like Pearl, she wasn't alone, had a powerful influence on, for the good, obviously, in so many families and
Didn't
homes.
say everything she thought.
She did.
No, she did not.
Oh, did not say.
She did not put a voice to everything she saw, thought, or felt. And I wish I could talk to her now. I did talk to her a great deal before she died. And that's how I found out my daddy was not mad at me for doing the water trick, for carrying water.
So you were under the impression as a kid that your dad was angry for what you had done.
Well, he didn't talk about it and everything. We tried to talk about it, make him mad, and kept his thumb on me like a iron bar. Like I guess that's what Clan told him to make sure he knew what I was up to.
So you earned a reputation before you even knew anything about much with the forces that be because of what had happened that day, and everybody knew about it.
Yep. Didn't help my social life at all.
Not with the boys.
Boys loved me, but I didn't like them.
You didn't like them. Okay. Has that changed?
Not much.
Okay.
I think if they had known the phrase lesbian, they would have thrown it at me. Just because it was different and icky.
Yeah. So this happens.
You can use that if you want to. I think it's funny.
This is all here for the world, and I love this because this is I've seen some of you can talk about it briefly if you like. I know that Oprah did a reunion with you and Hank Thomas and some of the Freedom Riders, Genevieve on TV. I saw a little piece of it on YouTube, but this is a deeper and more intimate kind of dive into those events. So
no, this is far more casual and it's post-COVID. So I am open mouth, insert foot mode.
Yeah, well, the truth will out 60 years later. To hear these events, for me, like I said, I adapted I got the rights to the David Halberstam book, The Children, which chronicles these events in tremendous detail. And I wrote a screenplay, which you kindly read, called The Children. And as I was writing the script, I felt as this bus came to its trundled to a stop in front of this store that this was, an important episode in this story, and it's there in my screenplay. Hopefully someday it'll be filmed.
But it's such a little piece, and I don't know why it's important. Maybe
I think it's important because it happened and it's real, and that there's, within every community, even the most racist of communities, that there are these, on the white person spectrum, there are people that are trying to do the right thing. There were white people on that bus who were freedom riders, some of whom got their ass kicked, not only in Anniston, but in Birmingham and later in Montgomery. And some of them were beaten to within an inch of their lives. So
I thought I might be. I didn't know when I waited out there with my bucket, I would go get a bat upside the head.
Or the next year or week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later in school. Who the hell knows?
Oh, I got plenty of lambasting at school from the Ku Klux Klan wizards kids. They used to sneer at me in the hall and call me in-lover.
Really?
I was older than they were, and I just turned around and I said, and I love you too, Stevie, because God says that we should love everybody. And that would just run them off like they'd been scalded. scalded with hot love.
Well, that's the essence of the whole nonviolent Gandhian method, is to fight those that would do you harm with a weapon for which they have no defense, which is indeed love. So you exercised it without the discipline and training, or maybe you got that training. I don't know.
It is. Sunday school. Return evil with kindness because it burns like coals. That's biblical. And I was raised in the Bible Belt, and I believed it every single comma, jot, or tittle
of that creed, of that belief.
And I had been saved and sprinkled. Sprinkled is a light form of baptism that doesn't get your clothes all wet, and Baptists kind of scorn it. But I was fully baptized in the United Methodist Church.
And, this goes back to the teachings of Jesus and nonviolence, is that when he says turn the other cheek, he literally means it literally. It's not some loose metaphor to be applied as needed. It's something that's actually an instruction, I believe, to be taken literally. And
do you know how hard it is to stand there and take it again?
No.
Do you know that the hardest damn thing you can do is to stand there and, like Hank Thomas, he said, he said, hit me. He hit me. And he stood there and he hit me again. I'm thinking, oh, Hank, you just stood there for it, didn't you, bud?
So Hank Thomas, some 20 years after this event, returns to the store with a CBS reporter, and then you have a reunion with him and you've become friends with him since. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, shortly after that CBS airing, I flew to Atlanta and stayed with his family for a while and got to know him and his wife, Yvonne, a couple of his kids whose names I've forgotten. I'm sorry.
Now, your life after these events, you're speaking to me now from Thousand Oaks, California, which is 1 million miles away in time and space and mentality from that little Route 202 in outside of Anniston. I guess, did you have an idea that, the South is not for me, I have to leave? Or talk about that, how that affected your thinking about where you grew up going forward from those days.
I didn't think I had much of a future in the South. And there was precedent in my family, too, because remember, my brother was in the Marines in Camp Pendleton, so he wasn't living in the South. My sister had graduated from the University of Alabama and married a man from New Jersey and moved to New Jersey with him. So there was precedent for us to leave the South. So I assumed that I would marry out. That's what I assumed.
And you went to high school, though, there? And
yep, I went to high school. I went to college there.
Yeah, you went to a local high school in Anniston, a public
Welborn,
school?
yeah.
And then beyond that, you where did you say you went to Clemson, or I'm sorry,
Auburn. Don't confuse me with a Clemson person.
I apologize. I don't want to make a mistake.
War Eagle, man.
And now, as the civil rights movement keeps firing, I read somewhere that there were a couple of preachers, and there was an effort just a few years after what happened in 1961, the Freedom Rides, to integrate the library in Anniston. And there was some Klansmen that were involved in that. I think one of the preachers was assaulted. I was reading that today.
I didn't get involved in the civil rights movement at the age of 12 after that happened. I just kind of tried to meld back into the community the best I could.
Right.
I still carried my belief system with me, but I wasn't old enough to be autonomous. I wasn't old enough to liberate myself, and I didn't.
So it wasn't until you went to college that you felt like maybe there was a way out of Alabama. And how did you get out? How did you end up
married?
Married
right out of it. Married the first.
Is that H1, husband one, or husband?
H1 of 5.
And tell me about that and where you ended up.
H1 was from Louisiana.
Okay.
And that's the South, but at least it's not Alabama.
Right.
I'm not making fun of them. I'm just condensing. H2 was Pakistan.
Wait, say that again?
H2 was from Pakistan.
Oh, H2 from Pakistan. Now you're out there. Okay. That's like, how did you get somebody from Pakistan?
Well, he had a doctorate in mechanical engineering from Auburn. I figured,
Oh, cool.
Nothing wrong with him except he's Pakistani.
And where did you guys live? Did you move to
Auburn? We lived in Auburn for most of the time, and then we moved to Los Angeles before that ended. That's how I got out here.
Now, talk about that. I live here in LA. I'm in Hollywood. I grew up here. I've traveled the South a little bit as a comedian. I've been, around various places across the country. And
He came out here on a job offer from Hughes Aircraft.
okay.
So we started in at Hughes Aircraft in Culver City. That's where a lot of good Californians get started, right?
Right, in aerospace. Now, did it feel different in California? Was it lighter, freer? Could you feel the weight of that kind of history leave you when you came here?
Well, not so much, because I was beginning to have some intercultural problems with the Pakistani culture.
You were, as
Yeah.
an individual.
Yeah.
How would you characterize that?
Like the same guy in college who can go to dances and drink and smoke and clown around turns into an entirely different creature when you have children with him. Suddenly we were, strict Muslim, and how did that happen? He's still in my life to the extent that, we have grandchildren, and, more power to him to get to know his children and grandchildren. But,
So you found a new kind of tyranny besides the tyranny of racism. It might have been a domestic religious tyranny in your own household.
Oh, yeah, there's tyranny everywhere. I didn't realize how many forms there are.
Yeah.
Let's see, how did we get up to 3? Age 3 was born in Studio City. No, he was born in Denver, and when he was a baby, his parents moved to Studio City.
Okay, and H3 is the current H?
Nope.
Oh,
We're not there.
got a history. Okay.
H3's father was a gig musician in Studio City, and his mother was an accountant for Multiple Sclerosis Foundation in Southern California. And then 4, man, I'm forgetting them. That's terrible.
Sorry.
Maybe not so bad.
You got half of a baseball lineup going on here, so it's.
Well, then there's the bomber pilot from World War II.
Okay.
I was married to him for 10 years. And then my current one, who was born in California, born in Camarillo, Oxnard, California.
If you're in Thousand Oaks, you're very close to his home base. So, we talked about this a little bit before, and maybe this will be our exit from this incredible conversation.
Well, I was a weirdo, and I think that Freedom Rider thing set me on a hard course to be excluded. And so I found my companionship on the fringes of society, other people didn't want.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't a cheerleader and the homecoming queen after that?
Oh, no. My sister was. She had that role.
We talked about this before we recorded, which was the kind of tyranny of the South and of racism and segregation and the Klan. But there's a different kind of tyranny or difficulty of making yourself personally free, of living out your truest identity. That seems like it's been a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody, but I think everybody struggles with that challenge, but it was clearly a challenge for you. Maybe you could share something about that. And
I'm not through yet. I don't know how it's going to turn out.
We're all a work in progress, right? When was the last time you were back in Anniston or Alabama?
It was one of the Freedom Rider things when they did a reenactment, and people walked for the last several hundred yards to the Freedom Rider Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
I go for those things.
Is there anything today with me that you would like to kind of make clear that maybe wasn't made clear in the larger documentaries and some of the books and other accounts of these events from your own perspective? I never really said this or this. There's people have a misunderstanding. Is there anything that's maybe hasn't been shared?
It's going to be controversial if I do.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll say it.
Say it.
There are still people who wish the Freedom Runners should just go away and leave us alone. We were doing all right before you came along, and we wish to hell you had never come. And even though they're getting that national monument, and even though they're getting all of this being included in the tour of the South Civil Rights Tour, it still bothers them that stuff is there to remind them. And because I am who I am, a person from the neighborhood, a person who grew up there, and a person whose sister kind of feels that way. She asked me why I keep bothering. Why? It's not even your problem, Janie. It's not your story. Why are you still bothering with all of that? So I know that the acceptance of getting that national monument is not entirely 100%, not even close. And And I don't know how to sort the wheat from the chaff. I don't know how to do it. I just love with all my heart the people who are good to me. And I try to return love for bad. When I can't get somebody's approval, I try at least to accept it and return love for it.
That's all I guess we can do as individuals. When I observed what happened, during the last 4 years with the PVP, I call him Putin's vice president, and then specifically what happened on January 6th with the assault on the Capitol, I couldn't help but think, and the 15 minutes or so that they got, actually it was longer than 15 minutes, it was a couple hours they got to do their damage, to inflict their mayhem and terrorism. I couldn't help but think as I was watching this on television in real time as it was unfolding of the events that occurred in Alabama in 1961, where the police took a little 15-minute, 20-minute siesta so the Klansmen could do their work, not only in Birmingham, but in Anniston and later in Montgomery. And it just seemed eerily familiar that they just sort of took a pass. And it just seems like the people that converged around that bus on May 14th, Mother's Day in 1961, that it was their grandchildren that were storming the Capitol. It feels like the great-great-great-grandchildren who maybe marched at Gettysburg to keep Black people enslaved. It feels like there's this kind of continuum in the American psyche that just doesn't really go away.
One thing I've noticed since the Freedom Rides, there is an awful lot of interracial dating going on the streets of Anniston. That used to be called miscegenation, and it was terribly against the law to mix blood like that. That's what it means, miscegenation.
Right.
And it still surprises me, and I don't know why it should surprise me of all people. I mean, I personally have never dated a Black man. I don't know if it's because I didn't get around to it. Couldn't find one. I don't know.
It's not over yet. It's not done. It's possible. Hang in there. Juneteenth was 2 days ago. It'll be fun. We'll get this shot. Come on.
And there is no finer person than you can face old age with than a Black man. They are so gentle and so supportive of their wives. I've seen it in the Freedom Riders. I've seen it among my friends. And I go, you go, Joyce. He's a good man, So, yeah, story's not over, is it?
No, it is not. And you actually, if you were married to a Pakistani, that is a cross-cultural outreach. That's even more dramatic, than somebody, a Black person in America. I mean, that's a big cross-cultural kind of.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah, well, how can you?
The thing is, I'll jump. When I have doubts, I will still jump. And I'm not sure that's good or foolhardy.
Well, maybe that was the same impulse that happened when you were 12 years old. You had some
I'm
doubts,
sure it is.
but you jumped,
Well, I didn't have doubts about my purpose. I had doubts about whether I could survive it.
Right. You had fears, it sounds like. And
yeah, I did.
It just goes to show you don't need all this education and training, but that your instincts, when it mattered, you did the right thing, and it makes it easier to live with yourself your whole life. Had you turned away or maybe had a different reaction and there were others around you at that same moment, maybe they suffered in ways that you didn't for not.
They did. I've gotten feedback through back channels. Like my sister is an eye doctor, an optometrist in Anniston. And I get feedback from her, from classmates that have told her that they admired what I did and don't understand why or how I did it, but that it was something they looked up to.
And did your sister suffer maybe because she didn't act like you did?
I don't know. She is a very prideful person. She doesn't want anybody to see her scars anywhere. So I don't know.
Maybe she got that from your dad. Who knows? Sounds like he had kept his cards face down.
He did. He kept an awful lot of them face down. I wish he had shown me a few more of them.
Janie Forsyth McKinney brought a corner of history to life in a way that I could never have imagined. I'm really so thrilled that we finally met. Even across this little slender digital thread called Zoom, we still did it. I hope sometime sooner than later that I can meet you in person. We have a cup of coffee or something out there in the TO, and continue this friendship, because for me, it's been a really meaningful conversation and experience. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, we tried. We were trying to get you on Facebook, and, like, what the hell? Where's this Janie? We got to get her. Come on, get her. And then finally, Well, a little email pops up and we got you. So I'm so pleased and so grateful. And I think this is going to be meaningful to a lot of people. I actually would like to talk to Hank Thomas as well.
You probably better hurry.
Yeah. I want to just thank you again for this incredible conversation. And I just appreciate it. I want to just thank everybody for listening. Until next time, namaste, shalom, and aloha. By that, I mean namashaloha. Janie, thank you so much for this conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye.